Hello and good morning from the Freedom of Information and Privacy Association. I'm Patrick Farnsworth, and this is Access and Privacy Online, and our first news summary of 2026. After the holiday break, there's a lot to catch up on. Across Canada and internationally, we're seeing familiar themes re-emerge. Data breaches with unresolved accountability, governments struggling to balance security, privacy, and transparency, and growing pressure to define how artificial intelligence is governed or not governed in practice. We'll start in Nova Scotia, where the fallout from a major data breach is colliding with electricity rate hikes and renewed debate over access to information law. Then we'll move through Canadian privacy and access stories shaped by FOI requests, before turning to international developments involving big tech, AI misuse, and whistleblower protections. Let's dive in. We begin in Nova Scotia, where a provincial energy board hearing is underway into Nova Scotia Power's request to raise residential electricity rates, even as the utility continues to face scrutiny over a massive data breach. According to the Canadian press, the privately owned utility is seeking rate increases of 3.8% this year and 4.1% in 2027. Premier Tim Houston has publicly called the request out of touch, pointing to the breach that may have affected all 550,000 customers. Opposition NDP leader Claudia Chender echoed those concerns, arguing that households should not be asked to pay more while trust in the utility remains low and incomes remain stagnant. Nova Scotia Power says the increases are needed to fund a $1.3 billion plan to strengthen the grid and improve storm response. Public hearings continue in Halifax through January 16th. As part of this broader conversation, we want to give a shout out to Jim Love and David Shipley over at Cybersecurity Today, who unpack related developments. They do a great job, and we don't want to repeat unpacking the release of a new provincial report. Beyond the province trying to bury it with release over the holidays, there's an important intersection of access to information issues and the potential misapplication of exclusions in the data breach incident report with solicitor-client privilege. Their analysis is well worth a listen, and we've included a link to their coverage in the podcast show notes. Turning now to Canadian privacy, where legislation, political rhetoric, and access rights continue to collide. Staying in Nova Scotia, Premier Tim Houston has come under criticism for citing a past Freedom of Information request as justification for resisting updates to the province's privacy law. Speaking in the legislature, Houston referenced a request seeking information about a riot in 2016 that broke out in a youth detention center. In response, the Premier's office said photos and videos of the riot would show the inside of the jail, and any health and safety reports would describe areas of the building, entrances, rooms, and more, which Houston has likened to security schematics. But critics, including privacy experts and journalists, point out that the Provincial Privacy Commissioner recommended partial disclosure years ago, and that the matter ultimately required a court appeal to resolve. While the government did introduce amendments to the province's access and privacy legislation, Commissioner David Nurse says key gaps remain, including the absence of firm timelines and full independence for his office. He notes the government has 18 months to implement the law and consider improvements. Regarding the firm timelines, Nurse has requested the government to set a 90-day time limit to complete reviews, similar to legislation already in place in Newfoundland and Labrador. Nova Scotia's track record on transparency remains fragile. The province was once named Canada's most secretive, and former commissioners have repeatedly warned that the system has been barely functioning. Across Canada, AI has been making waves in the court system, in defense systems, as well as new policies with vague details. In the Canadian court system, AI has been making waves, but there is concern about an over-reliance on the tool from both lawyers and clients, with some people even using AI to represent themselves. It was warned that relying on AI can cause misinformation due to hallucinations, cost money and reputation, and can potentially expose personal information. Meanwhile, the National Spy Watchdog is reviewing the use and governance of artificial intelligence by Canada's security agencies. Many organizations are looking to utilize AI for national security. Some of these agencies include the Canadian Security Intelligence Service, RCMP, Communications Security Establishment, Global Affairs Canada, Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada, and Transport Canada. On top of that, Prime Minister Mark Carney has sketched the broad strokes of an AI policy, but details remain vague. The new AI minister, Evan Solomon, plans to introduce a new privacy bill that will update the private sector privacy laws, but will only lightly touch on AI issues like child safety and fighting deepfakes. The Carney government has said in the past they don't plan to heavily regulate AI, but instead focus on the innovative aspect of AI for the country and prioritize the commercial applications of AI. There are links to a full roster of stories intersecting privacy and personal information in the show notes, so be sure to check out the website. Staying in Canada, we turn to stories shaped directly by access to information requests and what they reveal about record keeping and accountability. In Gibbons, Alberta, LGI reporter Trent Wilkie at the St. Albert Gazette reports that the province has stepped in as the town approved an interim 2026 budget amid a financial crisis. A provincially appointed official administrator is now overseeing decisions, with strict limits placed on spending and new capital projects. The budget is meant to be a short-term authority, while administration completes a thorough financial review and brings forward a final 2026 budget and tax rate bylaw in the spring. On top of keeping a strict budget, Council also moved to impose a moratorium on new capital projects except where required for health, safety, or regulatory compliance, or where current contractual obligations exist. Officials emphasize transparency, but acknowledge that much of the town's financial story risks being missed amid declining local media coverage, making public records and FOI requests even more critical. Meanwhile, in Ontario, access-driven reporting continues to expose gaps in institutional records. In Caledon, FOI documents revealed missing or incomplete records related to public opposition against a proposed query, fueling resident frustration and raising concerns about how municipalities document public engagement. After a resident filed a Freedom of Information request, he found that dozens of submissions against the query proposal were missing, including many formal objections that he and his neighbors had assumed would have been entered into the public record. He then informed residents on an email chain and urged residents to review the partial record and check whether their objections had been logged, misattributed, or omitted entirely. And federally, internal government records obtained through access requests have flagged gaps in dam safety oversight, underscoring how incomplete documentation can directly affect public safety and accountability. The documents revealed the Ministry for Crown Indigenous Relations and Northern Affairs Canada, or CERNAC, has no in-house engineers to review technical plans and conduct site inspections of construction and operations. It also has no budget to hire outside experts and no formal dam safety framework. CERNAC also cautions the federal government could face legal liability if any dams fail. Keeping on a federal level, Canada's Food Safety Agency is warning that climate change is exacerbating risks previously laid out in a 2024 to 2027 risk assessment obtained through an access to information request. The agency says infectious and particularly vector-borne diseases are strongly influenced by climate and weather. This warning comes as they are already managing a global avian flu outbreak, bovine tuberculosis cases, disease that kills off oysters on Canada's east coast, and the spreading of invasive plant pests. Finally, the communication regulator is considering changes to extend the reach of the National Alerting System. The changes would aim to make the National Public Alerting System, also known as Alert Ready, more accessible to rural and Indigenous communities during a crisis. One suggestion to make it more accessible is for internet service providers to upgrade critical infrastructure and address cellular coverage gaps, especially along highways and remote roads. Now to international stories, where concerns about AI misuse and data governance are escalating. Elon Musk's AI chatbot Grok, integrated into X, formerly Twitter, is facing investigations and backlash across Europe, Asia, and Latin America. Governments in France, India, Malaysia, and Brazil are probing the generation of sexualized and non-consensual images, including of women and minors. Musk has claimed he takes actions against illegal content, including child sexual abuse material, by removing it, permanently suspending accounts, and working with local governments and law enforcement as necessary. However, many countries are pushing for a more proactive approach and asking Musk to do more to rein in explicit or abusive content. European officials say this content may violate the Digital Services Act, while Brazil's data protection authorities have been asked to intervene. Lawmakers argue that the right to one's image cannot be waived through platform terms of service. Meanwhile, in Italy, the country's antitrust authority has fined Apple 98.6 million euros, about 116 million Canadian dollars, ruling that its app tracking transparency feature unfairly restricted competition, even while pursuing legitimate privacy goals. Apple has announced it will appeal. The authority didn't criticize the policy itself, but the fact that the Apple system requires third-party app makers to ask users for consent twice to comply with Europe's strict privacy rules. The concern was that it would make it harder for smaller apps to survive without charging customers. And in the United Kingdom, the government has confirmed it is investigating a cyber incident involving potential access to thousands of sensitive visa records, amid reports of hacking linked to China. The investigation began in October, and the government believes there is a fairly low risk that anyone's personal information has been compromised. The investigation started after a newspaper reported Storm 1849, a hacking group linked to the Chinese government, may have gained access to information related to tens of thousands of visas. And finally, in the United States, big tech's fast expanding plans for data centers are running into stiff community opposition. As more communities ponder building AI data centers, more residents are coming out of the woodwork to oppose these proposals. Some concerns include space, with some claiming they are proposing to build them in their backyards, as well as environmental concerns. In one town, they say they felt betrayed and lied to when they discovered that state, county, city, and utility officials knew about a proposal for a data center bigger than the Mall of America an entire year before the city, responding to a public records request and released internal emails that confirmed it. That's all for today. As always, we hope these stories help you stay informed about the evolving issues surrounding privacy, access to information, artificial intelligence, and public transparency. A quick reminder, Bill C-4 is heading towards second reading in the Senate. It's not too late to contact committee members or your member of parliament. We'll be back this weekend with our regular weekly summary. To support this work, please subscribe through FIPA News Monitoring or consider making a donation. Our writer is Sean Fisk. Original music is by the mysterious Breakmaster Cylinder. I'm Patrick Farnsworth, your host and producer. Thanks to the reporters, contributors, and most importantly, you, our listeners. Stay safe and stay informed.